the Dude Maker Hotline, and we'll say hello to old friend, author, Craig Shirley, whose new book is out today, and the title of the book is Last Act, The Revealing Account of the Final Years and Legacy of Ronald Reagan. Now listen to the subtitle. The inside story of a nation rallying and elites scheming following the death of Reagan. So I promised when you were on last time that I would have you on the day that the book came out, and here you are, Craig. How you doing?
Good, Mike. How are you?
I am well. Thank you very much.
Good.
So, what is this scheme that you speak of about as it applies to the president who I named a daughter after, Ronald Wilson Reagan?
Well, I I didn't see the press release, so I don't know what specifically it refers to. But I do know that that in the post-presidency there was a lot of scheming to appropriate his legacy and his name and the meaning of Reaganism, and it came to a head, of course, the week of the funeral with a great debate over his legacy, and those who wanted to tear it down and those who wanted to preserve it. And there were a lot of people in the Reagan faced criticism his entire life. And a lot of it was very, very personal, and it got extremely personal even the week of his funeral. You know, Paul Krugman and Washington Post writers and a lot of liberal academicians and others were very, very tough on Ronald Reagan, both his legacy and personally.
Well, I bore witness to this. I voted my first election. I was 18 in 1980, so I got to vote. So I voted for President Reagan, voted again in 84, and I've been a Reaganite ever since. And as I said, my one of my twin daughters I named Reagan. As a matter of fact, she has the post office issued a commemorative stamp in 1986 from the president, and it was a Reagan stamp. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I have.
Yeah.
When the post office used to sell these little books, you get the collector's book with the stamp in it and the seal, and the postmaster general signed it and all that.
Right.
Well, I found one at a garage sale about the time that she was to be born, and I bought it for her. She still has it up on her mantle, so we have that
Excellent.
Reagan stamp. Yeah.
Excellent.
So I go back a long way with President Reagan. One of the things that I saw in your in the press release that your publisher had put out, and I had not heard this story, but this just sounds so Reagan to me, and so much like the very mild-mannered and soft-spoken Christian that he was, that he sought out John Hinckley Jr. Almost to the end, so he could meet with him and he could forgive him. I mean, that is as magnanimous an act as I have ever heard. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, he about 6 months after he was shot and recovered and was back in the White House and fully functioning and fully engaged, he called Dr. Daniel Ruge, who was the White House physician, and he raised with him the idea of a private meeting with Hinckley, just Reagan and Hinckley, because Reagan wanted to tell Hinckley that he forgave him. And it wasn't a presidential pardon, but it was just a kind of a personal Christian-like thing. Mm-hmm. And so Ruge said, well, let me talk to the folks at St. Elizabeth. So they talked to, Dr. Ruge talked to Dr. Roger Peel, who was the head of the psychiatric unit and was supervising the 6 psychiatrists who were attending to Hinckley. And he was dubious, but he said, look, I'll talk it over with the attending physicians. He did, and they almost unanimously voted against Reagan, not for political reasons, and bear in mind, St. Elizabeth was always in need of federal dollars, and a presidential visit would have rained down a lot of federal dollars on it. But out of principle, they said, no, it would be better not to, because we've never had a patient like Hinckley before who was so out of control, such a sociopath, has no sense of guilt whatsoever. And if Reagan met with Hinckley, it would make legitimate his action in his eyes, that he was right in shooting Reagan and the Secret Service agents and the D.C. police officers and Jim Brady. That it would make it legitimate. So they vetoed the idea. So Reagan ended up not meeting with Hinckley because his attending physician said no.
And that makes sense. But I had never heard this before. Now, what capacity?
This is the first time the story's seen the light of day.
So, folks, you could read about this in Last Act, the revealing account of the final years and legacy of Ronald Reagan. So, what kind of faculty did he possess? I mean, he must have had some in order to keep asking for this, right?
Who, Reagan?
Yeah, Ronald Reagan.
Yeah. He was fully engaged from the day he entered office to the day he left office. He went to the Mayo Clinic every year to be tested, Mike, both physically and mentally and psychologically. And the mental tests included what you would expect would be number sequences and color sequences and memory and things like that. Reagan passed with flying colors every year. It was only until 6 years after he left the presidency in the spring of 94 was he diagnosed with age-apparent Alzheimer's.
And so my father succumbed to age-apparent Alzheimer's, and what ultimately happens is by the time the diagnosis is made, the disease has progressed. I mean, you get diagnosed because you know something is wrong.
Right.
And it's not like cancer that maybe it is, that it progresses in stage 3, stage 4, et cetera, et cetera. But when my dad was discovered, he was pretty he was pretty bad off, and I imagine that if the president was being analyzed and had to go in for treatment because he's a pretty sharp cookie, that someone must have noticed that what's wrong with Ron.
Well, I don't know if there was really any. There were a couple of minor things. A speech at his birthday a couple months before, things like that. But the first time it was noticed or diagnosed was his annual checkup at Mayo.
Now, I'd like to ask Craig Shirley, the author of Last Act, the revealing account of the final years and legacy of Ronald Reagan. I'd like to ask a question then. I have no knowledge of whether you cover this in the book or not, but you could answer it and we could find out. Did any during his final years, after he was in retirement and he was at the ranch, and he was being cared for by Nancy and I guess by some of his children, did any of those Hollywood actors that so savaged him when he was the Screen Actor Guild president, did any of them visit and pay last respects, say anything to the president at all that you know of?
Boy, that's a good question. To my knowledge, no. He had visitors at his office there in outside of Los Angeles. In fact, my brother and I went out to see him in 1996, 2 years after the Alzheimer's was announced, and he was fine, jokey, for an 80. Then it was 84 years old, I believe, and he was in pretty darn good shape. But I don't think so. Now, I will say that in defense of Hollywood, there was a lot of respectful notes and letters and cards and things like that were sent to Nancy Reagan after Reagan passed away. The Sinatra family and all the surviving members of the Rat Pack and a lot of other Hollywood celebrities. A lot didn't, of course. As you can expect. Jane Fonda and George Clooney and other habitual Reagan haters didn't reach out after he passed away.
A lot of people don't know that Ronald Reagan was he could have been a replacement for Joey Bishop in the Rat Pack. He did a Las Vegas review once. He was the host of it but he didn't get good reviews that time. It sounds like a great book, and I'm going to pick a copy of it up. The Last Act, the reviewing account of the final years and legacy of Ronald Reagan. The only other thing that I saw...
No, don't pick one up. I have my office send one to you today.
Well, sign it, please.
Yes. Yeah, you bet, Mike.
Now, I'm curious as to there's something else that your publisher sent out, and that was something about how Bill and Hillary Clinton treated the grieving former First Lady. Hillary's going to be on a debate tonight. Maybe somebody should ask her this question.
Well, Hillary was not a big fan of the Reagans, as you can imagine. She was
Right.
pretty much of a Reagan basher her entire life, and Bill kept pestering intermediaries the week of the funeral that he wanted to speak at the Reagan funeral at the National Cathedral, and the schedule had been set years before. But he kept pestering, this should be bipartisan, and I should speak, and he just kept, and they kept having to say no. But there was no way Nancy Reagan was going to allow Bill Clinton to speak at her husband's funeral. There was just too much animosity there, on the part of Clinton's toward the Reagans, and so there was no relationship there whatsoever. So the one time that Clinton and Reagan did meet, it didn't go particularly well. It was when Clinton, just after Clinton was elected, he went out to Los Angeles to meet with Reagan, but it wasn't. That was I think about one of the few times they met, other than when Clinton was governor and Reagan was president.
So now all we have to look forward to, now that you've written all about the Reagan presidency in a couple of books, now you've written about the after of the presidency, unless you're going to do a prequel, now all we have to look forward to is someone making a film out of all your work, Craig.
Well, I'd love that. There's been some discussion over the years, but nothing substantive yet. Although I would love it, but it'd have to. I'm afraid what Hollywood would do to Reagan.
You'd have to be the advisor as well. Craig Shirley, author of Last Act, a revealing account of the final years and legacy of Ronald Reagan. Craig, always a pleasure. Great luck with the book, my friend. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Folks, we'll be back with our final segment right after this. All right, folks, we'll see you tonight. Have a great day.